Hi, dear friends. Some words of Torah for Parshat Bamidbar. What makes for a good and virtuous life? As far back as ancient Egypt, people believed in a duality of sorts between chaos and order. The challenge for each person was to repel and overcome the forces of chaos and restore order for oneself and the world. The theme of order, as the key to perfection, can also be found in the Torah. A curious midrash links the 5 books of the Torah to the 5 times that the word or, light, is mentioned at the very beginning of the creation narrative in Genesis. It is only natural for the sages to associate light with Torah, as the Torah provides spiritual illumination and direction for all humanity. Rabbi Simon details how each time the word or, light, is used, it corresponds to a different chumash. For example, when God first said, Yehi or, let there be light, this corresponds to the book of Genesis, which is all about God creating. When the verse continues and says, Vayehi or, and there was light, this corresponds to the book of Exodus, when the Jews emerged from darkness into light. The curious student is welcome to study the Midrash in its original to see all of the correspondences, but let's jump straight to the book of Numbers of Bamidbar. Rabbi Simon states that this book corresponds to the words Vayavdel Elokim bein ha'or uvein ha'choshech. Hashem divided between the light and the dark. What's the connection? In this book, says the Midrash, God divided between those who left Egypt and those who came into the land. The commentaries debate the meaning of the Midrash. If the Midrash means to compare 2 generations of the Jewish people, the generation that left Egypt and the generation that entered Eretz Yisrael, to light and dark, which generation represents light and which represents dark? I'd like to sidestep that debate and suggest another meaning for the Midrash. The most important feature of the 6 days of creation is that of division. That is, God created heaven and earth from absolute nothing, what we call creatio ex nihilo. All subsequent creation was not the production of anything new, but rather the structuring, organization, and division of all that God had created. Light and darkness already existed, but God needed to divide them to create order out of chaos. Land and water already existed, but God had to cause the oceans to recede and divide from the land in order for man to thrive on dry land. By analogy, the initial creation was like the child who spills all of the pieces of Lego on the floor, and the subsequent creation was putting all the pieces in their proper place. When the Jewish people left Egypt, the birth of this nation was patterned after the creation story. They left in a state of chaos and disorganization. The subsequent 40-year sojourn in the desert is the story of how God, through his tutelage of this ragtag, discombobulated and disorderly people, molded us into a people of order and regulation. Instead of interpreting the Midrash as labeling one generation light and the other dark, we suggest it is depicting the division and structuring of the Jewish people. We went from an unregulated and disorganized nation of slaves and over time became an organized nation of priests and holy individuals ready to enter the promised land. There are many indications of this throughout the book of Bamidbar. The very fact that this book is called the book of Numbers, Chumash HaPikudim, indicates that Hashem wanted the Jewish people to appreciate the order of a census, which would allot a role to every single Jew, and that each group would encamp at a certain place with a certain banner for a certain purpose. The division of the Levite tribe and their special role is one more example of this organizational system being put into place for the Jewish people. The blowing of trumpets, as recorded in chapter 10, demonstrated to the Jews how to assemble for specific times and places in an organized way. They're following a set of protocols for the movement and encampment through the desert, also from chapter 10, further reinforce the idea of organization. The sundry punishments that are recorded in Bamidbar because the Jews failed to follow organizational protocols, such as when they raucously demanded meat and complained about Moshe and Aaron's leadership, reminded the Jewish people about the importance of being a calm and disciplined community. The story of Korach, who tried to break down the hierarchical structure, is also recorded for the same purpose. The blessings of Bil'am, who upon seeing the great order of the Jewish camp, had the spirit of Hashem rest upon him, and who recited the blessings, Matovu Ohalecha Yaakov, how goodly are your tents, Jacob. All of this reinforces the benefits of having organization and division within the Jewish camp. The various encampments in the desert, the setting up of Eretz Yisrael, its borders, the laws of inheritance, the establishment of the Arei Miklat, cities of refuge, all of which are discussed toward the end of Bamidbar. All of these help in the structuring of a Jewish people that has morphed from a disorganized body into a carefully oiled machine where each component knows its purpose and task. In their great wisdom, the sages told us that when we recite Havdalah in our silent Amidah prayer, we insert it during the first supplicatory blessing where we ask Hashem to imbue us with knowledge and wisdom, Atah Chonein. The truly wise person knows how to make divisions in order, which is what Havdalah is all about. We bless Hashem for dividing between the holy and the mundane, between the 6 days of work and the holy Shabbat, discerning the different roles and functions of every component of our lives, sorting out all the sundry events and people with whom we interact, making sense of a chaotic world. All this requires great wisdom. It is this wisdom that the Jewish people developed while traveling through the desert. If so, we should strive to grow together with Bnei Israel as they travel through the desert over these next several weeks. Today is Yom Yerushalayim, when we celebrate how Jerusalem became reunified after having been unnaturally divided. Next week will be Shavuot, when after counting 49 days, we will have hopefully gained a greater sense of structure and purpose in our lives, culminating in the giving of the Torah. And so, dear friends, may our lives always be filled with that sense of order. May we be granted the wisdom of knowing how to divide between light and dark, between the holy and the mundane, between the good and the evil, and between what will help make the world a better place and its opposite. As we continue moving closer to redemption, let us look forward to a time of eternal light. May we see it b'mheira b'yameinu. Amen. Here's wishing you a beautiful Shabbos. Shabbat Shalom.